and welcome to Real Talk. Real Talk is our podcast, and it's brought to you by Homefield Group at LePage Heartland. Today, I am here with Rick Lobb, broker-owner of LePage Heartland, and our esteemed guest, Kristy Daley. Kristy is a realtor at LePage Heartland Realty, and she's also a certified staging professional. So welcome, Kristy.
Thank you.
Very excited to have you here.
Yes, thanks.
Kristy's you've been with our brokerage for a year now as a realtor?
I think probably about 9 months or so coming up there.
And you were formerly, you didn't start your real estate business here, you were actually a realtor somewhere else.
In Toronto.
In Toronto, Ontario.
In fact.
Well, let's get right down to it. Let's get right down to it.
This so happens to be the person, so a year ago or so, there was a blog TO article.
And it was very heavily consumed here.
Toronto couple
Yeah.
sells their Toronto house to move to Goderich.
Nice little two-story red brick on Nelson Street. It said so right on the blog post, so I don't feel bad saying where Kristy lives,
Right.
because it was right on there. So
Right on there.
beautiful
So
house.
anyways, Kristy was the subject of that blog post.
See, we joke about it, but it was actually a lot of people in town know about that article, and it really. And so you should just be introducing yourself as the Toronto person.
That's right.
Because everyone will know you that way. But you are definitely a Goderich person now.
Yes.
And you're not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere.
You love it here.
We do.
Our kids are in the same kindergarten class.
They are.
Like it's small
I know,
town.
when
It's
you-
small town at its best.
They bought the house, they bought the church, they did all the things.
Yeah, they're doing.
Are we talking about that?
Doing the here on campus
We're
thing.
settling in.
But okay. Anyways, we're here today, not to talk about real estate in general with Kristy, but to talk specifically about staging. So
We'll circle back to the church.
yeah, we'll just let it flow. It's all good. It's all good. So certified staging professional.
Well,
Proceed.
I thought, seeing the market and where it's going, I thought it would be a definite asset for my business to become certified in staging. So worked on some courses this winter, and I'm excited about the things that I learned, and then validating the stuff that I think as realtors we already know. And it's just trying to find a way to communicate that to our sellers and to prove the value in staging.
So I know personally when I go into a client's home, I don't really know I might know the first thing, but I certainly don't know the second thing about what they should be doing. And that's where a service like your own, can kind of help a seller and a realtor know what are the misconceptions about staging. What's the ultimate goal of the staging? I suppose is what our viewers need to know. They need to.
I think it can sound intimidating to hear like this house was staged or you have to stage your home, and certainly our homes are obviously so personal, but being our largest asset, I think a lot of people everyone would benefit from staging their homes. And there's different levels of staging, but ultimately it's getting it prepared for the most number of buyers to be interested in your property. And I think as COVID has shown us, 100% of buyers are seeing homes online through photography, and that's going to be the first impression and whether or not you get those people through the door. So staging is truly kind of about photography. It's through the lens of what's going to look good, what's going to appeal to the most people, and ultimately at the end of the day for a seller, it becomes more money in their pocket. You've got more interested buyers, so potentially higher purchase price. You've got less days on the market, so the smallest amount of inconvenience. So you've got less people coming through your home, and hopefully the most qualified buyers are coming through.
Yeah, you're definitely right about, pre-COVID, people were obviously looking at things online first, but, and we've always, since the technology's been available, been ardent supporters of the full-on virtual tour. But at this point, during COVID, those that weren't doing it beforehand have had to, up their game. And when you photograph a house that has a lot of stuff that's in there, like that tends to make just the photography feel
Distracting.
Yeah.
It's distracting both in the photography and when you're there, like when other people's stuff's laying around. So that's obviously one of the first steps, is just, get a bunch of your stuff out of here.
Yeah, I think once they start looking, if a buyer's looking at your stuff, whether it's even staged or if no one's done anything, once they start looking at your stuff, they're probably not looking at the home, right? And they're not going to buy the home. They're getting distracted. And staging is it's supposed to be about condition. So identifying the condition of the home and making sure that things haven't been overlooked or neglected. Because as soon as buyers start looking at that and seeing that they're losing confidence in the purchase, they start deducting from the highest comparables sale price. And that's the way that we've kind of been looking at it as. We want them to look at the features of the home, the architecture, and the maintenance. And staging is really supposed to kind of fade away, and that you're supposed to be able to see the windows. And I think sometimes people can get a little distracted, even by staging. I think there's a misconception about decorating is staging, and it's not. Decorating is more about your personality and how you live 365 days of the year, whereas staging is temporary and it's supposed to appeal to everybody, whereas decorating is personal. So that's what staging, and folks can kind of figure that out. Some have been successful, but there's obviously a different lens to have a stager come in and be able to see your property as kind of a third-party neutral in it. Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, the biggest thing that somebody, when they come into a home that's staged, is they're going to have their top value in mind that they're going to know through comparable sales data, and then every little thing that they see, they might still end up offering on the property, but every little thing that they see, that they see dollar signs in a dollar figure, where that's like, okay, and it might not even be related to what it would actually cost to do something. Like, we're talking about a $200 paint job in a room. Somebody might end up taking, $2,500, $20,000 off of a price for what's effectively a $200 fix.
Exactly.
So, if you get those things out of the way first, then you kind of remove all those question marks and doubts. So
let's circle back to that church comment that I made, because you and your husband, your family, recently purchased a church in the area. And was was the concept there to try to have an interesting space that you could, that you could take this creative eye that you have and sort of create something residential or recreational, or
yeah.
What do you got going on there?
I know when we talked and I said, oh, we bought a church, and you said, you're not even licensed or certified yet, and I think it's going to be an exciting project. And I think what I've learned over my own homes and, updating them in different ways. And I staged our condo in Toronto when we sold. I kind of staged our house when we leased it out. So there's been elements. I think it's always funny because it's like, I'm not new, but my business is new. Right. And so with the church, I think it's going to be a crazy ride that we're excited about adding more living space. So possibly it's going to be a duplex with 2 bedrooms in the basement. And then we're going to do the upper floor and try to honor the church, but also kind of give it some new finishes that today's families might be interested in living in. So
and fun space to work in, just because churches by their design are created to make voices move, whereas in residential spaces you don't necessarily want
ultimate open
move.
concept.
So, so it'll present some difficulties that way, I'd imagine. But let's get back to a little bit on staging.
Sure, sorry.
No, it's okay. The people need to know.
Well,
the church.
They
You drop a little nugget like the church.
I know. I needed to make sure that we hit back to that point.
Because we care.
We didn't want people wondering.
We care so much about our followers.
That's right.
That we can't just leave nuggets dangling around like that.
Oh, they can tune in next week.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So when you go into a house and you're staging, you're doing a staging consultation. You're going to make suggestions on, this and that, move this, do this. We think you should bring some stuff in here. What would be like the most common first thing that you're going to tell you know,
And I want to evolve that question because,
wasn't good enough, eh?
well, it was, but it was leading in a direction that I was going to ask basically the same question in a similar vein. So oftentimes we hear the first thing that a seller should do is remove personal memorabilia or like photos, family photos, and that sort of thing, to take those photos off the wall and to replace them with more generic artwork. So I guess the question I have for you is, depersonalize the house or no?
Yes, depersonalize.
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 Don't tell the story about the seller that lives there.
Because you want the buyer to walk in and feel like it can be their home. And they say 20% of the sale is about the vibes that you get just being in the house. So you've got 80% is left over, like budget and doesn't have this stuff, but 20% is how they feel. And if they can see, you know, Tony's bedroom is outfitted with, you know, Tony's baseball stuff and his tea on the wall and that sort of thing, it can actually, they've even said that if there's a family that maybe children aren't in their future for whatever reason, there's some things that those can trigger in a negative way that actually turns them off from the house.
Right.
If it's, you know, baby room, family room, so they actually say even with children's rooms to depersonalize to the extent that it's almost such a neutral guest room. Which is crazy, and we would never suggest those things if it's not comfortable for a seller, but we tell them the benefits of doing it. And
I mean, if we're going to talk in extremes, that would be an extreme version of like to depersonalize.
Yep.
It's a real thing.
Yep.
Which is tricky when someone's trying to live in a house. So it can, and we've talked about this before, I think, on the podcast, that things are so crazy in the market right now that sometimes with the number of showings, people kind of have to leave the house anyways. They might go visit family or go for a vacation the week during all the showings, just so that it can stay the way that it's going to stay. So in that sort of situation, heck yeah, let's get all Tony's stuff out of here. You know, just leave the bed. Yeah. Because I can see that. I never would have thought of that. That like, if it could.
You're talking about Tony the T-ball kid, right?
Tony T-ball, yeah.
Okay.
Champion, Little League champion.
Yes, that's right.
Tony's got a good back.
2018. That was 2018 when they won the
yeah, it was the
championship.
Mosquito Championship.
Yeah.
Tony was the starting pitcher.
Is that against King Carden?
Yeah, King Carden.
I thought, okay, that's what I
Tony.
thought.
He's a hell. I think he's going to go all the way.
You think so?
Yeah, Tony.
He got that winning run.
Goderich Tony. But that would lend itself well to the house being occupied but vacant. So like, I guess there's a bit of a gradient, because sometimes a house is like literally empty. The people have already moved out. You have houses that people still need to live in, but they can be not in the house for a week's worth of showings, or you've got people that are trying to do their day-to-day living in a house, which is probably the trickiest for them to maintain the staging that's there, I suppose, right?
Yeah, there's different ways that they can approach it. Some people have great furniture that it's just a matter of accessorizing, or there's folks who've moved on and it's kind of like, okay, we've got this blank slate. What can we do with it? One of the things that I know you had mentioned, like with the market being as hot as it is, and sellers, there's often, you know, objections that sellers might have to staging. You know, it can be too much money, or they don't have enough time, or the house will sell itself. Well, those are valid. However, that's leaving money on the table for the most part. What we kind of do is, I love this phrase, it's called equity leakage protection.
Equity leakage.
Yeah, equity leakage. So it's going around and seeing like, okay, well, this room's orange. Like, is that going to appeal to everybody? Like, you're losing money when people start doing those mental
leakage.
deductions. Yeah,
It's a great term.
Orange room, leakage.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we're talking about the flow of a house, we're talking about the placement of the furniture pieces so that somebody can make their way through the property.
Yep.
Without feeling
Exactly. They want to be able to envision their own furniture in the space and being able to walk through rooms comfortably and see the functions of the rooms. So I think some people over the years, you can accumulate stuff that maybe doesn't fit the space, and trying to define, a dining room versus an office or that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that when your house is on the market, you've got these zones that buyers can easily identify. That's going to be my room, or that's going to be so-and-so's room, as opposed to seeing someone's room and going, that's that person's room, and not being able to see how you're going to live in the space.
So each room should have a primary use, I guess, is kind of what we're saying.
But a primary generic
That's right.
use.
And that's where we come in. If there's some spaces that that haven't been used in a while, or maybe are trickier layouts, we've seen homes that are older and rooms get divided in different ways. We can kind of figure out, is this best, as an office, or we're seeing with post-COVID, people have certainly appreciated more of that oasis retreat feeling, that whether it's outside or finding spaces in their home that they can do yoga and meditate and that sort of thing, something we hadn't focused on, and obviously offices at home as well. So.
And some of those uses where they're more flexible, I guess, are going to take up less space as well.
Yeah.
Because you want to, I assume, I'm not a staging professional, but you want to make it so that the size of a room can be
Showcased.
Can be showcased.
Yeah.
There's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And staging a property has changed throughout the course of a pandemic.
Oh, it has. Absolutely. I think you're seeing a focus even more on the outdoors, which, wasn't necessarily touched as much as, they say the staging industry is probably only about 25 years old. And certainly every few years it's evolved, and the last couple has taken it to different heights than we had before. And we're seeing it in markets where it wasn't present before. It wasn't necessary. Whereas now we're seeing people are changing locations, the mobility that they have with their jobs. So they come out to different markets and their expectations are different. And with that comes a higher price point, which can validate having a stager come in and try to secure that equity.
That's right. That's great. So people will often ask when we go in, and having your services is going to help with this, but should I be doing X project before we list? Like, should I be upgrading this bathroom, or should I be painting this or that? Like, so I would assume case-by-case basis for those, but what's your thoughts? Like,
yeah, I think that having a realtor, I always try to think that realtors are they can be like dentists, where it's like, I have a dentist, I have a realtor that I can continue to talk to throughout my time in my home, so that it's not a, hey, I want to list my house. It's a, hey, maybe next year. And then we can kind of work with that seller to find out what can we do over the course of the year, that it's not going to be a 2-week job before we list kind of thing. So being able to go in there and have those conversations, that even with upgrades that they do, where's the ROI on certain things and where to focus, and
that's a really good point, because like we always have, not always, but there's clients that their transaction completes and they're like, okay, well it's been nice knowing you, and I always try to indicate to my clients that no, like this, you can't get rid of me that easy. Like,
I'm going to be around.
I'm going to be here, because obviously we want repeat business from people, and we know houses and we know the market. So when people do have those sorts of questions that pop up, hopefully we come to mind as realtors, and we can kind of walk them through the process along with a staging professional.
Yeah,
it's great.
For maximum equity.
Leakage
protection.
That's right.
They say that a staged house will garner 6 to 25% more than a non-staged house.
In cash?
Yes, in their purchase price, it'll be reflected that
6 to 25%
more than a non-staged house.
That's a significant amount. So that's the sort of dollars that you're talking about. Then, like, that's if in a worst case scenario, and someone loses 25% of the equity out of their home that they could have got by having these things done.
They're protected.
That's a significant amount of funds.
And for those who are like, oh, I can't afford it, or it's not worth it, when you think about the cost of staging versus a price reduction, it's going to be considerably less when you have to stay on the market longer or have to justify your price.
So I have a question then, and that is, will you come and stage our listings for us?
Yes, I'll be there.
Excellent. We did it. We can.
Okay, that's good.
We can close out the podcast.
Yep, we got to where we needed to get. We've secured our stager.
Anything you want to add, Kristy, in regards to your services?
I think it's a great time to, obviously, we're looking for listings. You know, there are lots of families that continue to, and retirees that come out here to Huron County. So it's your biggest asset. So put the money where it matters. Start talking to a realtor, the Homefield Group, you know, get us out there.
Kristy Daley.
There you go.
Whoever it might be.
Yeah. So we'd be happy to like help everyone kind of work towards their listing and get them ready to shine. And,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the
Thank you.
podcast. The podcast. This
Here
is
in
the
Boston.
Real Talk podcast. On the Real Talk podcast, again, it's Kristy Daley,
Thank you.
Realtor at LePage Heartland. Thanks again.
Thank you.